If you were abducted and forced to crawl through a tunnel full of traps, could you survive? In this Why You Wouldn't Survive video, I'm going to go through the movie Meander and list all the reasons why you would never make it out alive. And since you're going to be barbecue before the end, go ahead and leave a like and please consider subscribing. Thanks. We start off with a woman named Lisa who is lying down in the middle of the road. As she is lying there, seemingly to unalive herself, someone drives up and offers her a ride. After some convincing, she decides to get in the car. This is a really bad idea. Thousands of people go missing every day, and while he could be one of the good Samaritans just trying to help you out, it is really just not worth the risk. He even tells her that there's a gas station 6 or 7 miles up the road, so if it were me, I would just walk it. All that being said, even if you refuse, he could just get out of the car and attack you. I mean, she is alone in the middle of nowhere. As they are driving, they make some small talk, blah blah blah, nobody cares. The interesting part comes when she turns on the radio and there's a news report describing a murder suspect that perfectly matches Adam's description. Being alone in the car with this guy makes her vulnerable enough, and now her biggest fear, in that moment anyways, becomes a reality. Now, the way I see it, you only have two choices. Stay there and take your chances, or just jump out of the car. Now, I know we see people jump out of vehicles and be pretty much uninjured in movies.
It just shows how broken we are, how much we really need help.
But in reality, jumping out of a moving car is going to f you up. So it really isn't much of an option, especially since he could just stop the car and then go finish you off. After some awkward silence, he slams the brakes, smashing her head into the dashboard, knocking her unconscious. She wakes up in a still box with some kind of weird lights on the walls. She is also wearing a full-piece latex suit with some kind of light attached around her wrist. She begins banging on the walls while screaming for help, but it's useless. No one is coming, and anyone in this situation is not going to be able to break out of here without some outside help. At this point, there isn't much she can do except just wait and see what happens. After a few minutes, a hatch on one of the walls opens up, revealing a long, dark, and very narrow tunnel. I hope none of you are claustrophobic. So now you have a choice to make. Either stay put and hope help arrives, or venture down the scary tunnel. Since she was abducted in the middle of nowhere, and most likely didn't tell anyone that she was going to go lay down in the middle of the street, there's a good chance that no one is going to report her missing for at least a couple of days, and there is no telling how long it would take for them to find her. Since there is no food or water in here, she would only be able to last about 3 days. Probably less, since we don't know how long she has been unconscious or the last time she had something to drink. I mean, she wasn't carrying any water with her when she was walking down the road. So if anything, I would put her time at about 2 days instead of 3. As for her options, staying put might be the best one. I would rather die of dehydration than get burnt to a crisp in this tunnel. But having a little hope is going to make you guys suffer a much more painful death. Lisa begins to crawl through the opening. As soon as she gets into the tunnel, the hatch immediately shuts behind her. There's no turning back now. Her wristband begins counting down from 11 minutes. We don't know yet what is going to happen when it hits 0, but it's safe to say that it's nothing good. So unless she wants to find out the hard way, she better start moving her ass. As she is crawling down the tunnel, a wall comes down, blocking the path behind her, forcing her to try and squeeze through this very narrow space. She happens to be pretty thin, and she has a lot of trouble squeezing through. So if you guys are horizontally challenged, you're not going to be able to get through here, and your fate is sealed. After squeezing past her first obstacle, she comes across a part that is divided by a platform. Now you have to make a choice, over or under. It's pretty obvious that it's going to start moving once you start to cross. I think it's very likely that you're going to get crushed here, regardless of whether you go over or under. She chooses to go over, which is definitely the better option. After she's about halfway, the platform starts to rise. She races to the other side and barely makes it through in time. When this thing starts to rise with you on top of it, if you panic and freeze for even just a second, you're going to get crushed. If you're too slow because you aren't used to crawling around everywhere you go, you're going to get crushed. In other words, you're going to get crushed here and turn into jelly. Lisa looks down at the timer on her wrist. It shows she has just over 5 minutes left, so she better get a move on. As she continues down the tunnel, she comes across a rotting corpse with a wristband that looks the same as hers. This rotting corpse is not a good sign. Not only does it give you a glimpse into your future, but it also tells you that it's not the first time they've done this to someone. Help never arrived for this person, so more than likely, it will be no different for you. This guy's wristband is also a different color than yours. It could just be because they're dead, but there really is no way that you can figure out what that means. Since it is gross, she doesn't even consider taking it with her. You can't spend too much time on this. The clock is ticking after all. As she continues down the tunnel, a gate drops down that Lisa can't slip past. At the 1 minute mark, both the tunnel and her bracelet glows red. Burners come out of the walls, and behind her the wall opens up, revealing a crawl space. Lisa crawls inside, and a piece of glass comes down. When the countdown hits 0, flames engulf the entire tunnel. I guess now we know what happened to that other person. After the fire is gone, Lisa is forced out and the timer resets. The game continues. Next she comes across a water-filled area. This part doesn't seem too difficult. The opening isn't too far away, so I think most people would make it out in one breath. Unless you don't know how to swim, then you're screwed. The water could be poisoned, or possibly some other trap could be in there. You have no way of knowing. She jumps in and makes it across, but as she climbs up into the other room, water begins rushing in along with another body. It would be pretty difficult to climb up this with all the water rushing in, so you would probably have to wait for the water to rise before you go up. This swim seems much more difficult than the previous one, and we have seen it claim a victim who had made it through all the other traps, so unless you're Michael Phelps, there's a good chance you would drown here. After she made it through, she hears someone else screaming for help, and as she starts moving toward the voice, the floor opens up, revealing a bubbling green pool. I think it's safe to say that you do not want to fall in here. She rips off a piece of her suit to test and see how corrosive it is. Personally, I think it's a waste of time. The clock is ticking, just move past this and get on to the next challenge. I do think this is one of those easier traps to get through though. While it is possible to slip and fall, just like Lisa does as she gets to the end, most people who would make it this far probably would get through this quite easily. So congrats, you get to live a little longer. This injury that she receives would make crawling through this tunnel much more difficult, but the movie doesn't show anything like that. But if it happened to you, it would make getting through some of these traps later on even harder. Continuing down the tunnel, she comes to a hole in the floor, which is where the man's voice is coming from, so she can either continue forwards and avoid the man or go down the hole towards him. This is a tough choice. On one hand, it would be nice not to be alone in this anymore, but on the other hand, you have no idea who this guy is. After all, trusting a stranger is what got you into this mess in the first place. So I think the safer option would be to avoid him. For all you know, this could be the guy who put you down here in the first place. But I don't think many people would think about this rationally. Also, you have to keep in mind that you are always on the clock, so it has to be a snap decision, and it's one that would likely get you killed. She ends up going down the hole and following the voice. Once she gets there, we see that they are at opposite ends of the tunnel with a gate between each one. As they are talking to each other, it is very clear that he has been here for a pretty long time, which is just one more sign that she is never getting out of this place. As your wristwatch ticks down to the 1 minute mark, the tunnel turns red and burners come out of the walls. A crawl space appears in the tunnel halfway between them. The race ensues. They both make it there at about the same time. Let's assume it took you between 5 and 10 seconds to make it to the crawl space. That only leaves you about 50 to 55 seconds to subdue him completely unarmed. Not an easy task. You have to get in the crawl space while fighting this guy, and you have less than a minute. In the movie, they struggle for a few seconds, and she gets the upper hand and pins his arm down with her foot. The glass comes down, cuts his arm off, and then he gets roasted. Okay, now that the fairy tale is over, let me tell you how this would really go down. Pinning his arm like that does nothing. He would still be able to move and grab her. So, at best, they would still be fighting when the glass comes down. Now you would be missing a limb or two, and at worst, you would lose the struggle and would be the one who gets roasted. Either way, you are completely screwed. During the struggle, she sees a tattoo telling us that this guy is Adam, the lunatic who attacked Lisa at the beginning of the movie. This solidifies the fact that no help is coming. The police may have been onto Adam, but now you have no clue who brought you here, so you are on your own. After the flames disappear, she passes out and gets woken up by whatever the hell this thing is. It heals her knee, then connects a tube to her suit that restores her memories. She remembers getting stabbed by Adam, then a bright light. So either she's dead and now she is in hell, or she has been abducted by aliens. Given the shit they've put you through so far, they're not the nice ones. After leaving the crawl space, she sees some symbols on Adam's wrists. Right after the crawl space closes, a spinning fan comes racing down the hall. The only thing you can do here is crawl backwards as fast as you can and go back up the hole you came through. The fan isn't moving too fast, but you wouldn't be either, shuffling backwards down a narrow tunnel. I would put money on most of you getting cut to pieces before getting to the hole. After she climbs up, we see something drop down behind her. We can see it's missing its left arm, the same one Adam just lost. So the lovely aliens turned our charbroiled friend here into a zombie. She manages to sneak away from him and comes to a crossroads, and she has to decide left or right. There really is no way to tell which direction you should go. Most likely there are traps down both sides. She eventually chooses the left side. The tube opens up to walls displaying Lisa's life, including the day her daughter died. After wasting far too much time on nostalgia, she begins to go down the next tunnel when zombie Adam is lowered from the ceiling. She is crawling quickly down the tunnel when once again the timer hits the 1 minute mark. Same as before, the tunnel turns red and the burners come out of the wall, but this time they're extremely sharp thorns going all the way down the tunnel. She is crawling through the thorns, cutting herself very badly in a panic to get to the exit. Zombie Adam takes cover in another crawl space that appears. As flames begin to engulf the tunnel, the floor beneath her opens up and she falls through. She should have been dead here. She failed to make it to cover in time, so she should have been barbecue. If it were one of us in this situation, we would have ended up just like Adam here. Lisa wakes up back in the starting room and the weird alien head comes down to treat her wounds. Having lost all hope, as most people would, she tells it not to. She writes the symbols on the wall in her blood to help whoever's next. She realizes that they are arrows telling her which way to go, which makes no sense. There were no spaces in the symbols. This is a really stupid way to tell you where to go. Even though Adam's symbols were able to be seen with the bracelet still on, but for some reason she has to burn it off, revealing her symbols. As she is speedrunning the tunnel, Adam comes up behind her and begins chasing her through the tunnel. After the fourth split, she goes through a spinning room and makes it out with Adam close behind. At the next split, her bracelet glows purple and she panic throws it down one of the tunnel. As she is sitting in the other tunnel, she realizes that she went down the wrong one. Now she has a choice to make. Continue down the wrong tunnel or turn back and face Adam. Just one of many no-win scenarios. She decides to go down the wrong tunnel. It leads to some kind of strange sack-like room with probably more zombie creatures on the outside. As she climbs into the next room, she sees Adam sticking part of the way out of the other hole. As she is getting her bracelet, the 1 minute alarm goes off and alerts Adam. She scrambles back into the tunnel and makes it into the crawl space, leaving Adam out in the tunnel. But instead of torching him a second time, it gives Lisa the middle finger and raises the glass, pushing her out towards Adam. She gets lucky and crushes his head. I really don't think it would go down this way. The most likely outcome would be Adam feeding on our corpse. She goes back and this time starts to go down the correct tunnel, but her dead daughter appears telling her not to leave. The correct choice is to murder this thing pretending to be her child and move along, but that is a difficult thing to do. She wastes a lot of time, but eventually she moves away from Ghost Daughter and continues to the last obstacle, which is a tunnel with blades coming down from the ceiling. They move up and down in 4, 3, and 2 second intervals. This last test seems impossible. If you were standing, okay, maybe it's doable, but crawling in this tunnel, there is no chance your ass is not getting cut in half. The 4 second one is really difficult, but maybe possible. But the 3 and the 2 second is impossible. She makes it through the first 2 with no issue, but on the last one, she loses half her foot, which in my opinion is pretty lucky that's all she lost. She crawls to the end of the tunnel to find it's just a screen of the outside and she can't actually get out. The tunnel glows red and burners come out of the wall. It seems like she is finally going to meet her end. but instead she is carried away to a waterfall where she is greeted by Ghost Daughter. So she made it out of that hellhole just to be stuck on some alien planet, with her only company being whatever the hell this thing is. And apparently all those other corpses are like her, or different versions of her, or maybe they sent her back in time. I don't know. It's not very clear. Anyways, something tells me that she is not going to get a happy ending. Do you guys think you could have made it out of the death tunnel only to die on an alien planet? Let me know down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and thanks for watching.